Really? God, would you... Why are you so dumb? God, I did not think they were that stupid. Welcome back, everyone. For this month, I decided to play one more real-time strategy game, Myth 3, The Wolf Age. You're probably wondering why I'm not starting with the first two games, Myth the Fallen Lords, or Myth 2 Soulblighter. Well, I never played them, only the third game. The third game's story is a prequel to the first two games, so it might be interesting to play this game, then play the first two games, and see how well the story lines up. Myth 3 was co-published by Take-Two Interactive and Gathering of Developers. It was developed by MumboJumbo, who made nothing I've ever played before. However, if you didn't know, the first two Myth games were developed by a little company called Bungie. That's right, Bungie created Myth 1 and 2, before getting bought by Microsoft, and would go on to make some sci-fi shooter. Myth 3 was released in 2001, and is technically considered an RTT, real-time tactics game, because there's no gathering resources or building bases. This makes the Myth game very unique since you just focus on your units. It is possible to play with friends, but I have no idea how to set that up, probably with Hamachi. Also, I played on the easiest difficulty because I heard on Mighty, aka Normal, it's a challenge, but you still need to play it carefully. I heard on Legendary, aka Hard, is really tough and almost every mission requires cheesing through it. Some might even be impossible. As usual, we're going to go through the story, so spoiler warning, what I liked and disliked, and any funny or awkward moments that happened to me during my playthrough. Let's go meet our new best friend.
This is a Dwarven Demolitionist. He will soon be your new best friend.
Incoming! Make way for the dwarf!
Casualty.
Wow.
Casualties.
Wow. It's just...
Casualties.
Oh, but hey, they got the trowel. Wow. Once again, like Black and White and Battle for Middle-earth, you can't find this game on any digital store. None of the Myth games. You can still buy a disc copy, or just go to myabandonware.com and download it. There is some advice in the comments about how to mount the game. Mine seemed to work fine, but at first none of the cutscenes or audio were working at all. I had to download the QuickTime kit, which fixed all that. I wasn't able to get the resolution to work, so once again we're playing Zack Snyder's Myth 3. I actually recently rewatched Zack Snyder's Justice League for the 6th time. It's one of the best movies ever made. Fight me. How Myth 3 plays is simple. Start off with a couple of units and need to complete an objective. You'll need to micro your units well because each death will make the game that much harder to complete. Every time I heard
Casualty.
I could feel that death and wondered, did I do something wrong, or was the AI being dumb? Worst thing to hear is,
Casualties.
if you hear that, chances are you're gonna need to reload a save. The controls are very strange and take a lot of time to get used to. Even I still had trouble. This was 2001, so I understand devs were still figuring out the best ways to game on PC. Every unit in this game is special in some way. There's some different kinds of basic soldiers for tanking damage, archers who can cause friendly fire, the Guard who are good at fighting but can also heal units, however have a limited number of times they can heal. There are some special units like our best friends or mages. Really? There are even a few hero units that all have their own strengths and weaknesses. Also, side note, you can rename each unit, and they do carry over into other missions. Before each mission, you'll get to see some amazing artwork, and get told what's going on and what you'll be doing next. The background slowly zooms in on the map where the next mission is taking place.
This was known as the Dark Time, when living nightmares haunted the lands.
Then you're finally in the game with a set of units. Usually you need to go and kill some bad guys. It's weird, there's no music. Despite the main menu and briefings having some really awesome music,
Move out.
as long as it takes place outside, you'll get some ambience with the wind or birds chirping, but going down into a dungeon, it didn't happen for all the dungeons, but I remember hearing this game was rushed. So it makes sense why some of this stuff might have been forgotten. The gameplay is pretty fun, but very slow. You're going to feel like you're playing StarCraft on the slowest game speed. You can hit F1 and F2 to change the game speed, but in later missions you may want to play on the slower speed, because things can get out of control fast. The final boss I had to play on half speed because his main attack is complete bullshit. Despite this, it made me still play carefully, because one mistake and I'm going to be hearing that narrator again. Overall, I feel it's the story that carries this game. It feels like a fantasy world heavily inspired by Tolkien's Middle-earth. I haven't read much lore, but what I did find interesting in this fantasy world, every 1,000 years the world changes from good or a light time to an evil or dark time. What happens at the end of the light times, a sort of spirit or transient divinity possesses someone and tries to bring a millennium of darkness to the world. This is called the Leveler, and usually it will possess the body and soul of the hero that defeated it. So at the start of Myth 3, it's nearing the end of a millennium of dark times, which means a hero will rise to change it to a millennium of light. It has to do with a comet that when it comes in the west, a hero will come, but if it comes in the east, then the Leveler has returned. Before the main menu, there is a cutscene explaining the time period we will be playing in and the main hero we will be following.
Connacht the Wolf, the greatest hero in all legend.
There is a tutorial to teach you the basics of the game, and the narrator has a few funny lines.
Welcome to Myth 3, the Wolf Age. If you want to survive long, you'll have to pay attention. This thrall attached to the post has volunteered to be an attack dummy.
Then we get to the first mission. The narrator explains every night there are creatures called Myrgard that come out and hunt humans. They were slowly driving humanity to extinction. The two main settlements were Llancarfan and Gower. One night, the people of Yursgard made preparations for a defense against the Myrgard. It's a good first mission because you wait for the enemy to come to you. This gives you more time to learn the controls and see what the gameplay is all about. You have Callieach the Barbarian, your hero unit, some melee units and range units. Just keep an eye on your map and send units to deal with the enemy as they appear. Before you know it, it's over.
Against all hope, the Myrgard horde was routed. For the first time in hundreds of years, humanity had stood toe-to-toe against the devils and defeated them.
If you somehow fail, then you hear this.
With the fall of Yursgard, the lands of Gower were left with no protection from the Myrgard horde. Within a year, Gower was overrun with devils, leaving no human alive.
I will say that's a nice little thing for them to add. Overall, a great first mission. Also, there is an Easter egg or secret mission to unlock. What you do is you play the first mission on Legendary, run south, and you'll find lots of Myrgard and a Pact-Mage. If you kill the Pact-Mage before it escapes and beat the mission, then hit next level. Unfortunately, it looks like the mission repeats itself. Yeah, the devs have a secret mission but couldn't get it to work, or someone just coded the next mission wrong to be a restart the mission button. Thanks to the YouTuber Guava Moment, he has a video on the secret mission, Defense of MumboJumboLand.
Squirrels? Squirrels, really? What the Oh, that's just cheating now.
There's even a giant squirrel to kill, but nothing special happens if you kill it. Next mission, the narrator mentions that Callieach is actually a name given from the elders of Yursgard, meaning deliverance. So we actually don't know his real name. Years went by, and the name of Callieach, the Devil Slayer, spread throughout the land. Callieach was able to unite all of the people of Gower to begin raiding during the day to push the Myrgard back towards the Dire Marsh. A scout reported he found a large cave with piles of skulls and rotting skin, which meant a Myrgard nest was inside. So now we get to move through a swamp. There's lots of Myrgard walking around. You can fight them or just sneak around until you find the cave. Also, watch out for the big Myrgard. I really like the stealth feel of this one. You generally can see the Mercuridia before they see you, which means you can avoid most groups. Now here on harder difficulties, this is a must because at the end, I believe you need to fight 2 or 3 giant Mercuridia in the cave.
The Mercridian nest was put to the torch. A triumphant cry bellowed from the Gower army as they marched deeper into the murky swamps, searching for other nests to raise.
After that, Connacht was able to push the Mercuridia back further into the swamp. The Emperor of Llancarfan, Leitrim, sent some of his royal Heron Guard to find this barbarian. He sent his champion, Damas, to convince Connacht to travel to Llancarfan and speak with the Emperor. The narrator explains the villain from the prior light time that brought the dark times was a man named Moagan, the Leveler. He was the most powerful Archmage in the world. He went to war with humanity against his army of undead, but lost. However, before he was captured and killed, he was able to bring the Mercuridia into this world and bring the world into 1,000 years of dark times. Now he has somehow returned. Connacht and Damas continue heading towards Llancarfan when they get ambushed by the undead. It's pretty simple, just follow the road and do your best to fight the undead. The tricky part is fighting the skeletons throwing javelins from hills. The higher up a unit is, the longer range they have. However, the best strategy to deal with them is have someone juke them out, while the archers get in range to deal with them. Damas is the fastest hero, so he's usually the best for dodging. You can always use your mage for fireball. Also, watch out for these boomers. They can sneak up on you if you aren't paying attention. Cross the final bridge and you win. This is overall an enjoyable mission.
Escaping from the ambush, Connacht led the retinue southwards towards Llancarfan. Damas, having witnessed Connacht's battle prowess and been saved from death by the man, swore his friendship and loyalty to the wolf from Gower.
Connacht arrives and meets with the Emperor and his advisor Mazzarin, who's leader of the Warlocks, and doesn't seem to like Connacht at all. The Emperor asks Connacht if he will train some of his soldiers to fight the Mercuridia. Connacht says he will do this, but asks in return the protection of Gower. The Emperor agrees and tells Connacht he will need to shave.
My appearance is my own.
Still, you need to earn the respect of your men.
I will make them respect my command.
This obstinacy is intolerable.
Connacht, as a general in my army, you will have to obey my commands. So please shave and dress appropriately for your charge, will you?
I will do this, my emperor.
For 3 months, Connacht trained 200 men to be fearless in battle. When the city got attacked by Mercuridia, Connacht's men rushed to the battle and killed all of the Mercuridia. Not one of Connacht's men died. His company of men were given the name Devil Slayers. Then the Avatara Enclave had a mage appointed to observe the Devil Slayers. His name was Myrgard. Later a scout reported he saw Mercuridia gathering fresh corpses into a pile. Then a strange-looking Mercuridia cast a spell and soon the corpses came back to life. Myrgard knew this was a Mercuridia Pact-Mage. Connacht and his Devil Slayers were sent to find and slay the Pact-Mage. This mission has a lot of tall hills, so be prepared for skeletons throwing javelins from far away. Then there are not zombies, but thrall. They're easy to kill from range, so no need to send in your melee to fight them. There are a lot of them, so it's best to use fireball when you can. Then when you find the Pact-Mage, he will spawn a ton of thrall, then try and make a run for it. So it's best to flank him and then try to rush him. If he gets away, you lose, so don't let that happen. Overall, it's a pretty fun mission, and once again, boomers will try and sneak up on you.
With the death of the Pact-Mage, the Mercuridia fled their lairs for the safety of their vile swamps. In the den of the Pact-Mage itself, a large tome was found amidst the foul rubbish.
The tome was given to Myrgard to study. Connacht and his Devil Slayers were given a celebration when they returned to Llancarfan. Several days later, Myrgard revealed his findings from the book. It was written by Moagan himself, and had all kinds of dark magic for the Mercuridia to learn. It also gave the location of Moagan's main encampment. Connacht took this information and suggested a surprise attack. The Emperor agreed and gave Connacht a regiment of his finest soldiers to attack Moagan before his plans could be started. After a month of marching, they arrived at Moagan's camp and attacked. but then a figure emerged and made an army of the dead burst from the ground to surprise the army. The figure was Bahl'al, the Watcher. Since the main force was fighting the undead, the Myrgard charged Connacht's second force on the hilltop. Finally, a third force Connacht had sent to flank Moagan's camp in case he tried to escape were getting attacked by giant creatures called the Trow. They wore iron armor a foot thick and completely decimated the army. Connacht ordered the retreat.
Moagan, who had not so much as lifted a finger during the battle, threw back his head and laughed.
This mission is pretty simple, but it can be really intense because the Trow and the Ogres are too strong for you to fight in a straight-up melee fight. So, you must run. You will run into some undead along your path, which you must take out quickly. You will get some more units later on, but for the most part, as long as you are quick, you should be able to stay ahead of the Trow. Still, it got scary at times and they almost caught up to me. Then you need to use the mages to seal the canyon. This was a great, unique kind of mission where you are on the retreat and have to run away from the tough enemies.
Moagan's trap was masterful. Much of the army of Llancarfan was decimated. If not for the sacrifices of a few heroes, none of the army would have survived.
Connacht was decimated after his failure. He prepared to go back to Gower, but Damas and Myrgard caught up to him and told him if it wasn't for him, none of the army would have made it back home. Myrgard suggested since Bahl'al the Watcher was allied with Moagan, they will need a powerful ally as well. He then proposed they look for the tomb of Mazzarin, the first Avatara. Then a woman named Ravana appeared and tried to speak to Damas, but he didn't pay attention to her. Tales tell that Mazzarin was slain by Bahl'al the Watcher, but Myrgard believes he's still alive. They just need to find him. Ravana was eager to join, but Damas said she will just slow them down. Ravana insisted because Moagan has been killing lots of her clansmen and will do anything to avenge them.
As the two quarreled, Connacht stated that she could accompany them as long as they could stop arguing like they were betrothed.
Myrgard spent weeks looking for any evidence where Mazzarin might be and found,
I shall go to a place where life is old, and the world is as it was in the beginning.
The Forest Heart was the only place that fit that description. They set out and spent many days searching the forest for any lost ruins, until they finally came across something. This is a really simple level. There's a few undead and armored spearmen to fight, as well as some banshees that throw skulls out and you need to dodge them, otherwise they will deal massive damage. Look for the 3 runes on the map and place the right hero on the correct rune to have colored rings appear. Once all 3 are active, at the same time the door to the tomb will open. This is a mission you should play on a harder difficulty because I had no issue. It's honestly the easiest and my least favorite out of all the Myth 3 maps.
The opening yawned before them, dark and threatening. A loathsome air rolled out from the catacombs, like a breath of ill omen.
As the 4 heroes entered, the door closed behind them. Myrgard read the mural on the wall and could tell this was Mazzarin's crypt, but it read,
To enter this realm is to forfeit one's life.
The mission was a little confusing. The game doesn't tell you that if you get close and click on these cauldrons, it turns on the light. This was a long dungeon to run around in and click on these orb things to unlock doors. At least there's a boss fight at the end. There's 2 ways of killing this white spirit thing. You can have it lightning the 4 walls around it, which for some reason will kill it, or do it the hard way and chase after it. If it gets too far, watch out because the lightning hurts a lot. It runs fast, not even Damas can easily catch up to it unless he cuts it off. Myrgard at least can stun it, which should give you time to get your heroes to surround it and trap it from escaping. Eventually I was able to kill it, which felt great. Then we get an in-game cutscene of the party meeting Mazzarin.
Those who would defile my cairn will forfeit their lives.
They ask him for his help, but he refuses. Connacht calls him a coward and tells him the Watcher is with Moagan. Mazzarin gets angry for mentioning the Watcher, but decides to give Connacht the ability to see into the past and future events.
And disciple, let the Watcher know who has aided you in his defeat.
Also, there is a secret in this mission. At the start, quickly select all your heroes and press U. This changes all of your heroes to better heroes. I almost thought maybe this is a reference to Lord of the Rings in some way. Legolas, Gimli, Aragorn, and Gandalf. Thanks again for Guava Moment. He also shows during that in-game cutscene, there are different versions of the scene in the game. So what you see is the camera changing to different places in the level to get close-ups or wide shots. Very interesting. Definitely check out his channel if you want to learn more about Myth 3.
Connacht awoke several hours later. He was a changed man. All the strength and sorrow of ultimate knowledge burned in his eyes. He would hold the scars of Mazzarin's fiery grip for the rest of his life.
As soon as the heroes got back to Llancarfan, Connacht went straight to the dwarf Traitor and his dwarves known as the Smiths of Myrthemni. Connacht asked if they could build a magical device capable of capturing whole groups of enemies. Traitor said they could, but first they need the Dwarven Book of Building, which is located in Myrgard. However, reports came in that Myrgard was besieged by a horde of ghouls. The Emperor agreed they should send a force to assist, but told Connacht that if he fails, the loss of troops might doom the rest of the Empire. They entered the Badlands and found an encampment of ghouls. They decided to launch a surprise attack on them. This mission is when the training wheels come off. Things become a lot more difficult, or at least you need to be extra careful and aware of enemies. Not only are there lots of enemies, but the enemy gets special units, like this tornado thrower guy. Also, a bunch of boomers line up to be destroyed. Yeah, I'm still getting used to those controls. Even though I lost some units and took a big hit from a tornado, I got lucky that that was the last of the army and won. I will say, I did enjoy this mission.
The Ghoul forces were smashed and scattered to the arid winds. The army of Llancarfan continued its march toward Myrgard in hopes that they would reach the besieged city in time.
The army continued marching to Myrgard, but there were signs that a large army of ghouls were already far ahead of them. Meanwhile, we get to the leader of the dwarves, watching out as they prepare for the final charge of the ghouls. This is a defense mission. Grab all the dwarves and run inside here. It can be tricky, but I learned in a later mission, holding down Control and left click on an area will have your best friends attack that spot on the ground. Most of the army will come straight in at the front, but ghouls do try and attack the walls on the sides to breach and outflank you. I tried posting a best friend out there while the rest hold the front. It gets intense trying to kill the ghouls as they come in. Just make sure to keep your eye on them because I don't know what happened here. Luckily I was able to rally and defeat them. The Llancarfan forces eventually show up and help kill off the rest of the ghouls. Check out all that blood.
Caught off guard between the Dwarven and Cathbroic forces, the Ghoul horde was crushed into dust. The few ghouls that remained after the massacre fled to the south, swearing eternal revenge upon their ancient Dwarven enemies.
The Dwarves were happy to see Connacht and his army. After celebrating, Connacht asked the leader for the book and the leader gladly let them have it. Connacht returned home with the Dwarven forces and gave the book to Traitor. They spent a long time making the Tain and eventually created it. Now with this powerful artifact, Connacht now planned to attack the Dire Marsh and destroy the Mercridia. With the help of the dwarves, Connacht now took his forces to the Dire Marsh. When they arrived, they were attacked by Mercridia, but Connacht pulled out the Tain and suddenly with a flash of light, the Mercridia were gone. They were pulled into the Tain and forever trapped inside. Now Connacht's army arrived at a black spire and said the object they seek is inside that fortress. You get to easily fight the Mercridia. Click on Connacht and press T, then click on the enemy and watch them get sucked into the Tain. Just be careful, you can suck up your own troops. When you get to the spire, the Pact-Mage disables the Tain. You'll need to fight your way to this entrance and that's it. It's really simple and easy when this one object can easily kill enemies. Almost feels like turning on cheat codes. Also, don't trust your best friends to kill on this map. With the rain and swamp, their bombs have a small chance of actually blowing up.
The walls of the ancient spire were breached. Connacht and his forces swept into the fortress, slaying the last of its defenders. The Pact-Mage, however, was nowhere to be found.
Connacht and his men took the Black Fortress, but after searching all the bodies, the Pact-Mage was nowhere to be seen. They did find a passage that led underneath the spire. A dwarf suggested why not just bring it down, but Callieach said they needed to be absolutely sure the Pact-Mage is dead and not just buried alive. Then some Heron guards spoke of a legend regarding a powerful Myrgard named Thalor the Black. So powerful, he was able to disable magical relics and create his own artifact known as the Eye of Thalor. He infused his soul into the artifact, so if his body dies, he can just conjure a new one. Oh look, it's Thalor. Of course it's not that easy. This dungeon felt like knowing where to go pays off. I went to the right, but it led to a dead end, so it felt like my fighting was a waste of time. I reloaded and went to the left. Watch out, cause Thalor shoots lightning and that hurts a lot. Make sure to use your best friends when possible, it'll make things easier. Eventually you'll get through and find the eye. Just kill Thalor and then blow it up to win. It's a long map to get through. I wish they had more enemies or do something like each time Thalor dies he comes back stronger and faster maybe. Still, I thought it was fun, but it is a difficult mission.
As Thalor's eye was shattered, so was the soul of the accursed beast. With the Tane functioning once more, Callieach and his men strode into the Black Spires and exterminated the Myrgard within.
3 months passed, and Llancarfan continued to prepare for the defense against Moghim. They discussed Moghim is somewhere in an area called the Downs. These are fertile farmlands for the Empire, and Moghim is destroying their food production to starve Llancarfan. Then he will attack while they're starving and weak. There's also the refugee problem. They're having trouble feeding and sheltering the overflow of people. Then suddenly a messenger storms into the war room.
My Emperor! My Emperor!
What? A battle horn?
Moghim! He is here!
Indeed, Moghim's forces had arrived. Enraged at the destruction of his precious Myrgard, Moghim had ceased his attack on the farmland of the Downs and had marched his deathless armies day and night to reach the city.
The defenders of Llancarfan watched as the undead slowly marched towards the city walls. The people that didn't make it to safety were being killed and risen into the undead army. The Oghre slaves searched the nearby towns for materials to give to their trowel masters. At dawn, the horns of battle sounded. I think you just need to hold out for 10 minutes, because the battle ended despite the fighting was still going on. Lots of enemies come from 3 sides. There's the main gate and 2 side gates for you to try and hold the enemy off. Not much advice I can give, except when you encounter the trowel, it's best to just have a Huron guard run in circles and let archers, mages, or best friends deal with them.
Against all hope, the forces of the Cathbruid repelled both Moghim's undead armies and the mighty Trowel warriors. Cheers roared from the battlements as Moghim's forces pulled back.
Even though Llancarfan pushed the undead and Trowel army back, it was only a matter of time before they would return. During the battle, Moghim himself was there and took part in the battle. A few Huron guard made their way and tried to fight Moghim, but each time they were cut down by him. Some archers managed to land a few arrows into Moghim, but he plucked them from his body as if they were just mere annoyances. Callieach saw all this through a spyglass when he saw in Moghim's hand a small gilded scepter, then became overcome with a vision of history, and now he knew the device Moghim was using was a rod of the Callieach. As the defenders repaired their defenses, Callieach told Damas and Myrgard of what he saw. Myrgard explained the device requires a powerful ritual to attune the device to the user, and once completed, it renders the user immune to all harm. Moghim was literally immortal. Scouts reported Moghim's camp was about 5 miles away to the north. The Avatara knew of something called a world knot, which is basically a teleporter. And luckily there was one in Llancarfan and another located about a mile from Moghim's camp. It was a suicidal plan, but Sardonic, one of the oldest Avatara, chose to lead the mission along with Llancarfan's most elite troops to sneak into Moghim's camp and destroy the rod. Once again there's rain, so don't rely too much on best friends to get kills, unless the explosive hits directly. However, the archers you get are elite archers. So not only do they fire faster, but are so much more accurate. This map seems pretty open, but it's actually pretty linear. You make your way to the road, so no need to go over the bridge, and there's nothing down this way except lots of trow and ogres. So you have 2 entrances to try and get in. If a Trow ends up chasing, then just have a Guard run around in circles while archers quickly take him out. Sardonyk has a special power with limited uses. He blows up enemies which spread to other nearby enemies. Really cool, and yes, it can spread to friendly units. Just follow the path and keep fighting enemies until you get to the rod. I use a Guard to run by and distract the Trow. Sardonyk casts a spell to blow up the rod. I will say, it felt like a stealth mission, but I don't think it did anything different, maybe just made your units harder to spot. I still like it and would love to try it on a harder difficulty.
Sardonyk gave his life to destroy the rod, but his sacrifice was not in vain. Moagim, fearing for his mortal life, fled with his troops into the Downs.
4 days later, the Emperor calls for everyone to discuss what to do next. With Moagim retreating into the Downs, everyone knew he would be back after he raises another undead army. However, everyone agreed the bigger threat was the Trow. On top of that, their Ogre slaves were also massive brutes for Llancarfan to deal with. That's when Callieach spoke up and said they needed to eliminate the Trow to win the war. No one had ever stood up to the Trow and survived. But Myrgard then said he learned that the Ogres are not following the Trow willingly, but under a spell of subjugation. If they could release the Ogre, the Trow would have a rebellion to deal with, rather than march with Moagim.
And so, Connacht was granted a small force to march into the Trowlands and attempt to achieve his improbable plan.
After a month of traveling, they reached the Trow lands. They came across their first Trow temple. It was massive and almost looked like it reached to the heavens. They waited until night to sneak in, then Myrgard and a small group will release the Ogres from the spell to fight against the Trow. This is where the difficulty really spikes. As you've seen before, fighting the Trow in melee combat is suicide. This mission makes it clear the devs knew you would try to do the circle strategy, but once you get to the last few remaining Trow, they will rush for Myrgard or your best friends. So I try my best to take out what Trow I could by having a Guard do the merry-go-round, then have my best friends kill them with explosions. Just watch out, cause sometimes your demolitionists might accidentally kill each other. However, you can get free units by using Myrgard's new ability. Aim for the middle of the group to grab them all. Then I suggest having them run back to the start. Once you've grabbed as many as you can, then notice the remaining Trow are charging at you. It's time to send in the Ogres.
Casualties. Casualty. Casualty.
Get out of the way.
Casualty. Casualty.
Jesus.
Casualties. Casualty. Casualty. Casualties.
That seemed terrible.
Sadly, I got all of the Ogres killed, but it was enough to kill the remaining Trow. You're probably thinking that doesn't look so bad, but it took me a couple of tries to get it right and lucky. But oh, just you wait.
The temple complex at Avernus fell to the Ogre rebellion. For the first time in centuries, the mighty Oghre bellowed cries of war to their ancient gods.
Within hours, the Oghre in the settlement were freed and joined with Callieach to free the rest of their race. They liberated more Trow temples and left no Trow alive. The largest Oghre that was in charge went by Macbraga and suggested they go to the iron mines of Avernus. When they arrived, they spotted Trow amassing their slaves into battle formation. Now, this is arguably the most difficult mission in Myth 3, in my opinion. When I was younger, I always got stuck here. It always appeared to be impossible, and even today, I had my doubts. It felt like the enemy spawned behind me at times, and after many tries, I was finally able to beat it. The main issue is the Trow priests. When Myrgard releases them, the priest will usually take them back right away. They also will go straight for any released Ogres you have, which can be a strategy like I did to draw them away, buying me time to reposition. The main things I can say to help you is remember Damas is fast, so he can outrun any enemy. Use him to draw most of the enemies away, but be sure to check back on him and keep him running around. Then use your archers and best friends to try and take out the priests. Then use Myrgard to release the Oghre and have them do most of the fighting. Sometimes I got lucky and used the Oghre to turn and kill the priest, so at times it felt like I got lucky the AI stopped working. I think this was probably the best spot to position the enemy and use your archers from the top of this hill to deal damage. Remember, your best friend's explosion will stun the Trow for a second, which can make a difference. Lastly, make sure to have many different saves.
The forces of Llancarfan led the Ogres to victory over their Trow slavers. The iron production at the mines had stopped. The Trow would have no choice but to deal with the rebellion.
Oh my god.
A cutscene plays of Myrgard teaching the Oghre how to cast the release spell. Then Damas and Callieach talk about how they both know the Oghre don't stand a chance against the Trow.
Yet we send them off to die, so that the wrath of the Trow will be turned from Llancarfan.
Without their rebellion, Damas, we would be destroyed within a year.
So our lives are bought with the blood of the Oghre.
Destiny can be a cruel mistress.
When Callieach and the army returned, Callieach went back to Traitor and told him a new weapon he needs made, the SunHammer. Traitor at first said he can't make such a device, but then Callieach held a glowing gem, a Callieach Heartstone. This is what Traitor needed to make the SunHammer. This gemstone came from the Rod of Mogan's immortal artifact, which Callieach retrieved after being destroyed by Sardonic. The SunHammer would still take many months to make. As Callieach left, a woman ran to him and said her husband was taken by something called the Spider Cult. The guard said it's just some small group that worships some spider god.
Only Traitor realized the true danger the spider cult posed.
2 years had passed since the beginning of the Oghre Rebellion. Mogan did not try another assault on the city without the aid of the Trow. However, he continued to destroy the fertile farmlands. This was causing thousands of refugees into the city. In the heart of winter, Ravana received word from her homeland the 12 Duns had fallen to Mogan's army. She had planned to go back, but stayed because of Damas. Now she decides to go back and rescue her people. Damas won't let her travel alone, so goes with her. They took some soldiers and spent weeks looking for the refugees and couldn't find them. Then one morning they saw smoke on the horizon. I did enjoy this mission. You need to go to the 3 towns and escort the civilians back to the bridge where you start. There's the boomers wandering around that you need to be careful of. There are some skeleton throwers and thrall, but surprise, some fast-running undead. Each time you get the refugees, more undead spawn. When you grab the last group, there are a lot of undead guarding the bridge, so watch out. You shouldn't have too much issue with this mission, and overall, it was fun. Another one I would like to try on a harder difficulty.
Ravana and the Llancarfan soldiers repelled the Watcher's forces, giving her clansmen time to flee southward. The clansmen of the 12 Duns swore allegiance to Ravana and their Cathbroic saviors.
Damas and Ravana returned to Llancarfan. Damas had to go before the Emperor. He accepted whatever punishment for leaving his post and taking some soldiers without permission. However, the Emperor understood this disobedience and decided on leniency. Mazzarin wasn't happy about it, but since the people approved, he did not say anything. Callieach received a message that the SunHammer was finally completed. However, when he gets there, 2 cultists attack him. He takes some guardsmen and heads inside. Callieach gets a dwarven smith up, and he's pretty cool. He has a powerful flamethrower ability. It kills spiders easily and heavily damages cultists. This was a fun dungeon to run around in. Some cultists can stun your units, and these enemies throw a potion to also stun in an area, so try to dodge them if you can. I think you need to kill all the enemies and rescue all the dwarven smiths to win. It's not too difficult, as long as you use the flamethrower well.
Callieach and the dwarven smiths drove the remaining spider cultists from their forge. But they were too late. All of the forge's artifacts were missing.
The spiders and the cultists used the sewers to sneak in and kill many of the smiths while they were asleep. They had stolen the Tane and the SunHammer. Callieach gathered the guardsmen and headed to the spider temple and demanded them to give him the artifacts back. The cultists refused, so Callieach had the temple surrounded, then planned to storm the temple in the morning with an army. However, during the night, Traitor and the remaining dwarf smiths of Myrthemne made plans to use the same sewers the cultists used to invade the spider temple from underneath. This mission will take some careful planning. First thing I should have done was continue down this passage. I would have gotten to the Tain, which would have made things a lot easier. But I took the other path and had to do everything the hard way. Eventually you get to the giant spider room, and fight the giant spider god. I couldn't tell if she can get hit by melee attacks, or maybe I just had her in an awkward spot, but even then she stuns and rips through any unit in melee. You can hide behind these hills and take her out from afar, but at about 50% health she runs to this spot to get her health back. She seems to keep doing this, so I can't cheese it like I tried here. She kept trying to kill the closest target but couldn't hit him. Then I tried for several minutes to hit her with my best friends, but once I got her to 50%, she would just run forward and get her health back. The only way I could see is lay down all your explosives and draw her on top of them by running far enough away and while dodging her ranged attack, then blow her up.
Yes! Eat it!
Then this spirit thing runs around the room and I kept trying to attack it, but I noticed its health wasn't going down at all. That's when I looked at the hints page and it mentions getting the Tain first. So I quickly ran back and found it, then got new units, which would have been really nice to have, ran back and Traval used the Tain on the spirit. So all things considered, I really like this mission. The boss may have seemed like you could have cheesed it, but nope. I had to think creatively to beat her, which I'm sure was what the devs intended.
With great courage, the smiths of Myrgard saved the SunHammer and imprisoned the spider god Seercrosh and her seed into the Tain.
Connacht and the guardsmen stormed the spider temple, but did not encounter anyone. He did find the Tain in the SunHammer and a note from Traval and the smiths. Apparently during the construction of the Tain, they somehow brought something from another world into this world. They felt honor-bound to take care of this monster. They also believed it was somehow bound to them, so they must also go into the Tain with the spider and the cultists.
Make sure this reaches General Connacht, as we believe he is the only one who can save Llancarfan.
So wrote Traval, Forge Master of the Smiths of Myrgard.
On that same day, the Trow killed off the last of the ogres and ended their rebellion. They also realized what the iron had done to them, so they cast it aside. With the Ogre rebellion over, the Trow knew that humans were responsible for it, so they prepared to go to war with the Empire. Connacht went to the Emperor and told him about the SunHammer, and needed an army to come with him back to the Trow lands to finish them off. Emperor Leitrim didn't seem to hear Connacht and only said, "What Mazzarin orders, so shall it be so." Mazzarin then said to Connacht he would only get 100 soldiers. Connacht was outraged about this but knew not to speak or Mazzarin could make things worse. Then after weeks of marching towards the Trow lands again, they made their way through the Dire Marsh. Now that the Mercridia are gone, it should be safer to travel through. Strange not to see Connacht or Myrgard. However, you don't really need them, because overall this mission was easy. At first I thought it was a filler, but story-wise it actually matters. It's only undead to worry about, and not much else to say. Follow a linear path until you kill all the undead. I recommend playing this on a harder difficulty to enjoy it more.
Surprised by the might of the Watcher's army, Connacht's forces had narrowly escaped to the north.
After breaking through Bahl'al's ambush, Connacht and his army continued to the Trow lands. However, Connacht knew there was only one way the enemy could have known his position and where he would be traveling. Someone had betrayed them, but he doesn't know who. They eventually arrived at the Trow Temple of Mazzarin. It looked almost deserted, and with no ogre slaves to upkeep the temple, it was falling into rusted ruination. Damas noticed some undead in the temple. The Trow had no magical powers of necromancy, so it was obvious Mulligan was using the temple as a staging area for his troops. Here we go again, fighting the Trow. This time they don't have their heavy armor, so they theoretically should be easier to kill, right? Well, they move much faster now. So Connacht, being my fastest unit on this mission, can't outrun them. I tried several times figuring out the best strategy. They still get stunned by the explosions, but I also noticed when I did big changes to Connacht's pathing, the Trow would do a big slow turn as well to try and cut him off. This gave more time for the explosions to go off. However, sometimes Callieach still got kicked, or the Trow would do the smart thing and attack my best friends, leading to a restart and try again.
Okay, I'm super confused.
And again.
He's not even close.
And again.
Wow.
All you need to do is go to the 5 temples around the map and press T to activate the SunHammer. This will melt the temple and kill any Trow near Callieach. There's 5 temples and only 6 charges of the SunHammer to use, so only use that 1 extra charge if you have to. Also keep in mind you get 4 Heron guards, each carrying 9 healing charges for a total of 36. Overall, I like the challenge of this mission, but you'd have to be insane to try it on Legendary.
The mighty SunHammer laid low the Trow Temple. Many of the Trow were engulfed by the waves of white-hot iron slag.
With the SunHammer proving to be effective against the Trow, Callieach and the army continued to destroy more Trow cities and turn them into molten iron. Then they finally reached the ancient city of Rhiannon, the capital of the Trow civilization. Callieach tried activating the SunHammer, but when the light dimmed, the city was not affected. Myrgard told Callieach that the city must somehow be shielded. Callieach looked at the Great Temple and had another flashback, and knew what was inside that temple, the Heartstone of Nyx. As Callieach told his elite veterans of the plan, Myrgard prepared a powerful spell. Then an army of Trow charged at the soldiers, but Myrgard unleashed his spell which froze all the Trow in place. On this mission, the hints tell me I'm on a timer, so I'm not sure if you actually are on a timer, or I imagine after 15 minutes or so you just fail. You don't get any hero units, so you need to be even more creative this time. I got lucky here getting one Trow stuck on another. If you can perfectly time the explosions, you can stun lock the Trow in place. Once you get to the Heartstone, just have a unit run by and get the Trow to chase after them. Then you have your best friends destroy it. I don't know where these Trow came from. I guess they just teleported in? I thought this mission would be more difficult, but I guess by now I just figured out the best way to handle the Trow, so they aren't much of a threat anymore. However, it is still fun and was intense to make sure my units were in position before pulling the Trow. They were a great enemy to fight.
With the destruction of the Heartstone, the SunHammer engulfed Rhiannon in columns of searing light. Those Trow that did not die outright were drowned within the lake of molten iron.
Upon returning to Llancarfan, Callieach became Grand General of the Empire. As winter ended, Callieach decided to take the entire army and lead them west to hunt down Moagim and his army. Just before the army was about to leave, Emperor Leitrim asked to lead the army into battle. Mazzarin stated that the bidding of the Emperor would be followed.
Before Callieach could rebuke the advisor, Emperor Leitrim gently asked Callieach if he would let an old man lead his people to their greatest glory. Callieach could not bring himself to refuse his wishes.
After a few days' travel, they saw the destruction of the Downs, and eventually caught up to the undead army at Hell's Ford. And this one was easy. You fight lots of undead, but best friends are super effective against them. After fighting some undead armies, Myrgard joins you. Take your army north and fight Bahl'al the Watcher. He throws out an area of effect spell, so make sure to dodge that. At first I pulled his army of undead to be taken out, but when I sent everyone in to finish him, he just spawned more in. However, it seemed like more than enough of my soldiers got to him, until I forgot I commanded Myrgard to cast his special power on Bahl'al.
Oh, yeah, no. Myrgard, that was terrible. But whatever. There we go.
It got the job done. Overall, it was a fun mission, but I imagine it would be more fun on a harder difficulty.
The dream duel between Myrgard and Bahl'al had ended in the Watcher's defeat. Moagim, having his forces smashed by the Cathbruig army, fled into the west.
With the victory at Hell's Ford, Moagim's army was crippled and on the retreat towards the Cloud Spine. This worried Callieach because if he makes it to the western lands, he might not ever be stopped. As they continued to pursue Moagim, they made camp one night, and a member of the Avatar remarked at Myrgard's extraordinary powers. He said that not even the most accomplished Avatara could weave the dream spells he can cast. Myrgard stayed silent, especially when someone asked where he learned these great spells. They made camp one last time as they reached the Norn Pass. At dawn, they would move to stop Mohigan from escaping. Then an in-game cutscene shows Mohigan somehow sneaking into camp, killing the Heron Guard protecting the Emperor, then killing Emperor Leitrim. This is a defense map. Undead will spawn and make their way over to kill your units. The archers are at least hero type, so just look at your minimap and take out each wave that comes. Not much else to say, it's really easy, and definitely play this on a harder difficulty for a challenge.
Even as the dawn rose and the last of the undead were slain, the battle had been lost. The Cathbruic Empire had lost its emperor.
After the battle, a great sorrow befell the ranks. The emperor of the Cathbruic Empire was dead. Connacht and Damas laid the emperor to rest. Even with the power he received from Mazzarin, Connacht muttered to himself, "This was not written of." Connacht returned to the army and rallied the remaining forces he had and bid them to avenge the death of their emperor. You have Connacht, Damas, some melee, ranged, and best friends to use. For the most part, this mission is easy. I used Damas to draw the undead in and have my elite archers do most of the damage, and have my two best friends blow up the rest. You walk all the way and eventually fight Mohigan. It's more of the same that you just need to avoid this area of effect attack. But I just told my archers to attack Mohigan and eventually they killed him. Kind of underwhelming, especially since the narrator claims Connacht did it.
Mohigan, the faceless terror, was put down by the might and skill of Connacht the Wolf.
The heroes had fought their way to Mohigan. Connacht had a fierce battle with him, until finally Mohigan clutched his final wound and dropped into the snow and mud. The undead army collapsed as the magic that held them together was no more. But now, with the war being over, our heroes begin making their way back to camp. Then everything gets revealed. Mazzarin turns out to be the real leveler. He had revived Mohigan and used him to pretend he was the leveler, while Mazzarin rose through the ranks of the Empire. Myrgard was working as a spy for Mazzarin and gave him the power and knowledge to become a powerful Avatara. At first I was wondering why the Llancarfan army is fighting us, but it had to be Mazzarin cast a subjugation spell on them. It does feel weird to be fighting soldiers of Llancarfan. I kinda feel bad since they are under a spell and you must kill them to get to Mazzarin. Watch out for the mages, they will cast Fire Blast, so I had to sacrifice a unit so my archers could kill him. Then it's mostly easy to kill the soldiers. There's another mage this time and I had Connacht take the Fire Blast. Now we get to Mazzarin. He seems to randomly cast these Fire Blasts in a cone. It only takes one hit and any unit will die. Mazzarin will cast the Fire Blast cone and it will follow that unit he casts it on. Usually it's at the closest unit, so you need to carefully position your units like this, then send some units to distract Mazzarin and have the rest of your units slowly get closer to him. Once you get close enough, he will turn to run. Just watch out, he may turn and try to fire another Fire Blast. And after many tries, I was finally able to kill him. His head comes flying off.
Mazzarin's body lay in the cold snow as Connacht held aloft the traitor's severed, yet still screaming, head.
With the real leveler Mazzarin exposed, Connacht cut his head off. Strangely, through some kind of dark magic, the head of Mazzarin continued to live. The subjugation spell had been lifted and the Llancarfan army stopped attacking. Myrgard was spared because of all his help in the past, but he was still a traitor. He did it for the vast power known only to the leveler, and so offered his soul in return for that knowledge. Connacht let Myrgard go and told him to never return. He would forever be known as the Deceiver. To ensure Mohigan could never be resurrected, his body was incinerated, the ashes were mixed with sea salt, then placed in a metal urn, then the urn was placed deep underneath Mount Kor. Bahl'al the Watcher had survived and fled west. But later the Avatara hunted him down, but thought death was too merciful. So they imprisoned him with a powerful spell that permanently sealed his body into the very rock of a mountain in the cloud spine. No one knows whatever happened to Mazzarin's living head.
Well, that's just lazy writing.
After mourning the death of the Emperor Leitrim, Connacht was crowned the new Emperor of the Cathbruic Empire. At his coronation, Emperor Connacht issued 3 commands.
Firstly, the city of Llancarfan was to be renamed Myrthemne to honor the brave dwarfen smiths who had given their lives to save it. Secondly, for the honor of the Northmen of the 12 Duns who had fallen in battle, they were to be interred in the mausoleum of Clovis, the first emperor of the Cath Bruig. And finally, the mountain pass where Emperor Leitrim fell to Moagim's blade was to be renamed the Stair of Grief. And with that, Emperor Connacht began the rebuilding of the great city of Myrthemne. It was the end of the Wind Age and the beginning of the Wolf Age.
We get the final cutscene. Connacht speaks to Damas. Ravana and Damas got together and had a son named Finn.
He has his father's skill, I bet.
And his mother's temper.
Connacht then tells Damas he needs him to gather all the artifacts of power, such as the Tain and the SunHammer, then to try and destroy or burn what artifacts can be destroyed and bury the ones that can't. Then never tell Connacht where he hid them. Damas asks why he wants this. Connacht explains he knew that there was a traitor and knew he would become the Emperor. However, it is the future that concerns him. He knows that it is only the beginning of 1,000 years of light, but he can see in the future he will return, but it may not be a good thing.
Preposterous! You cannot mean that!
If only it were a lie. But I cannot believe that it is. That is why I bid you to destroy the artifacts of power. When the darkness resurfaces, I do not want it to have access to those items of destruction. You will humor an old man, won't you?
Though I do not completely understand, I will do this for you.
I pray that you never do understand. You are a good general, Damas, and the closest of friends.
And you mine, my Emperor.
In conclusion, Myth 3 The Wolf Age is still surprisingly a fun game. I thought this wouldn't be much fun or be a subpar RTS or RTT game. To my surprise, there was a lot of careful planning and many restarts I had to go through just to beat this game. It was interesting to see some missions are harder than others, and despite playing on the same difficulty, I'm sure this game just needed more QA testing. But from what I heard, this game was rushed, which makes sense with some of the awkward things I experienced. I also really enjoyed the story. I think it would do well as a series on Netflix or Sci-Fi. This is one of those games that I think would do really well with a remaster or maybe a remake to smooth out the experience for modern gamers. As it stands, Myth 3 is worth checking out. I hope you can get it to work. Next month is May, which means Star Wars. I'll see you then. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. Please like and subscribe to help grow my channel, and comment below on what you thought. Thanks again, and I'll see you in the next video.